Hello again, kings and queens, and welcome to another video. Gravity Falls is one of my favourite shows. In fact, here's me in a Bill Cipher shirt. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it, because as well as being funny, it is an incredibly well written show. Now, what this video is not going to be about is Easter eggs. Yes, Bill Cipher is in the last frame of the opening credits. Hey look, Gideon's on the back of that magazine Dipper's reading in episode 2. If you want all that, you can probably find that video chilling next to every snail in Adventure Time. The polish and continuity of Gravity Falls is impressive too, like Mabel dropping butterscotch candy wrappers in the background of every crime scene during Headhunters. Or how about Blinden being in the background of Six Strange Tales, despite the fact his character wouldn't be introduced until Even Stranger Tales almost a year later. But that's not what this video is about, so let's move on. I'm talking about proper story that starts in episode 1, technically when Dipper finds the journal, but for dramatic cliffhanger effect and for the purpose of this video, I'm going to say the story begins at the end of episode 1 when silly old Stan is revealed to have a secret room that of course closes before the audience can see what's in it. Is that a hook? Finally, something relevant to the title of this video. Showing a supposedly dumb character has something to hide. Quite an exciting hook. I wonder if they would ever do that again, Alex Hirsch is not a lazy writer. Take the episode Summerween. It could have been so easy just to have the trickster attack Mabel and Dipper because the Mystery Shack has the portal underneath it with all the weirdness. But he didn't. He made Dipper antagonize the trickster by throwing out the loser candy, thereby giving a one-off villain a better motivation and bringing him closer to the audience than many Hollywood blockbusters do.
He lived only to conquer, only to conquer, only to conquer.
This may seem like an odd thing to point out, but in its own tangent way, it's another example of hooking an audience by creating a more human version of Oogie Boogie. But I'm also saying that Gravity Falls never falls into the trap of using the Mystery Shacks as an ex machina, and I'll talk more about that later. But any conversation on Gravity Falls wouldn't be complete without talking about Bill Cipher. And remember when I said Easter eggs were silly? Well, that's not entirely true. When Bill shows up in Gravity Falls, we should know absolutely nothing about who he is. Any other show would begin a bunch of exposition, but not Gravity Falls, because we've seen him everywhere. We know he's magic, we know he's strong, and we know he's going to be important. Which makes sense. We're watching the show from Dipper and Mabel's perspective, and to have Gideon just read aloud something from the journal he's already read before is just lame. The more the twins clash with Bill, the more 3D he becomes. Literally. And I'll add to that and say that when Ford explains the origins of Bill Cipher, it's actually one of the most boring parts of the show. This technique of showing the audience something without explaining it actually works wonders. Look at the finale of season 1. Mabel sees the interdimensional portal but ignores it because it looks boring, which is totally her character. But due to dramatic irony, the audience gets excited because they know this machine is going to be used at some point. This is how Gravity Falls keeps an audience hooked. It has the short-term satisfaction of an episodic structure, but has hints of serialization which makes an audience say, this is a great show. One crisis may be dealt with, but the big threat remains out there and the mysteries are still unsolved. Again though, the audience only ever gets little cliffhangers because we're following Dipper and Mabel. Everything they discover then gets swept under the rug by Grunkle Stan trying to protect them. This may all seem a bit confusing. How can the main events and the filler episodes go hand in hand? The answer is the journal. It can be used to link both types of episodes together. Every page is a different episode, but you have to watch till the end to find out how relevant it is to the main story. An example of this is the episode The Northwest Mansion Mystery. Dipper is hunting a Villain of the Week ghost, while Mabel and friends are trying to get into a party. All very one-off episodic. And then McGucket shows up. Now, even though Dipper's been thinking he's the author, we the audience know there's absolutely no way that's happening, and that leads us into a false sense of security. And then, in literally the last couple of seconds, the dirty old man sets up the entire final showdown. Status quo destroyed and switched to a cliffhanger in an instant. But Alex Hirsch didn't just do the big cliffhangers, he laid the groundwork in them too. In another supposedly irrelevant episode, Dungeons, Dungeons and More Dungeons, is actually the adventure where Ford trusts Dipper enough to give him the rift, which becomes slightly important later. From there, we're getting to the end of the series. There are only 2 seasons after all. But one last example would be when Mabel punches a unicorn and steals its hair. 5 episodes later, we find out that the Mystery Shack is the only place safe from Bill's corruption. And just like with Submarine, it's not random. A lazy writer could have just used things from the past, like saying the shack's built on top of a portal, or even that Stan's character is just too stubborn to be corrupted. But it was in fact the magic hair from half a dozen episodes ago that most people would have forgotten about, that Mabel, let's say, collected, that did the trick. Ultimately, I may have made this video a bit messy just because I wanted to talk about all of my favourite episodes, but if there was ever an example to show that you should know how something's going to end before you begin it, Gravity Falls is that show.